My name is Ahmed Al-Hassan and I am 43 years old. Once, my name opened doors. Men lowered their eyes when I entered a room. Elders trusted my voice and children repeated my words. I was raised for Islam before I learned desire. My father's dawn recitations were my lullabies. The prayer mat my playground. Obedience, my first language. By adolescence, I had memorized the Quran, and by adulthood, I wore the robe of an Imam, stitched from expectation and fear. Marriage came as duty, not romance. Children followed as legacy, not choice. Each Friday, I climbed the pulpit and spoke certainty with a steady voice, explaining God as if I held him in my hands. Applause lived in their silence. Inside, dryness spread. My prayers rose and returned untouched. Fasting sharpened hunger that food could not fill. Charity eased others, not me. And I told doubters that questions were whispers of shaitan while swallowing my own until they burned. At night, I lay awake listening to my breathing, asking why peace never arrived. I buried memories of boys struck for mistakes, of women dismissed as distractions, of funerals where I promised mercy while fearing the truth. I told myself faith meant endurance. I told myself God loved obedience more than honesty. Still, something starved within me, unnamed and dangerous. Respect became a cage. Every nod from elders tightened the bars. Every sermon demanded perfection. Doubt, I learned, was not a thought, but a crime. I became skilled at performance, smiling at praise, sharpening my tone against skeptics, memorizing answers that avoided the wound. Yet contradictions bled through the text, verses bending with convenience, a mercy colliding with command. I told myself scholars knew better. I told myself silence was wisdom. Then exhaustion found me. I felt hollow during prayer, heavy during teaching, distant from my wife and children. I feared the hunger more than sin, because hunger pointed somewhere else. I could not name it, but it called to me in quiet moments, asking if God was alive or merely enforced. If you are listening to me now, hear this softly. Stories like mine survive only when someone chooses to listen. If this testimony reaches you, consider subscribing, liking, commenting, and sharing. Not for attention, but for the unseen ones who search in secret and need courage to breathe. Everything changed on one night I never planned. A place I revered became a threshold. I arrived carrying titles and left carrying questions. That was the night I stood before the Kaaba and everything I believed shattered. I did not know then how close fear had come to naming itself as faith, how often obedience had replaced love, how silence had masqueraded as holiness. I carried generations on my shoulders, my grandfather's expectations, my father's pride, my community's hunger for certainty. Every mistake felt public, every thought dangerous. I learned to edit my soul, trimming doubts like weeds, until the soil itself grew thin. My children memorized my sermons before they memorized my laughter. My wife read my eyes and asked gentle questions I could not answer. I promised her stability while shaking inside. The hunger returned in quiet flashes, during ablution, during recitation, during the long walk home after night prayer. It felt like standing before a locked door, certain someone waited on the other side. I feared opening it would destroy us all, so I tightened my grip on routine, multiplied rules, corrected others harder, hoping discipline would drown desire. It never did. I want you to understand this before the story turns dark. I was not searching for another religion. I was searching for life. I wanted God to speak, to heal, to be near. I wanted rest. I wanted truth that could breathe. When certainty became a costume, I wore it anyway, because removing it felt like death. I tell you these things so you know what broke that night was not loyalty, but illusion. What cracked was not faith, but fear. The ground beneath me had been fragile long before I reached that sacred courtyard. When I stepped forward, I carried years of unanswered cries. I thought I was approaching holiness, and I was approaching exposure. I did not yet know a name for what waited, only that my breath shortened and my heart listened. History pressed close, and heaven felt nearer than doctrine. I took one step, unaware that obedience had ended and encounter had begun. That moment would divide my life forever. Nothing remained the same. I entered the courtyard before dawn, when the marble still held the night's cool breath and the lamps hummed like distant insects. The Kaaba rose ahead of me, black and absolute, drawing the tide of bodies into its orbit. As an Imam, I had guided others here, corrected steps, lifted voices, ensured intention. That morning, my feet moved without authority. The crowd pressed, the chant swelled, and my chest tightened as if a hand closed around my ribs. I tried to steady myself with verses I had taught since youth, but the words slipped, thin and brittle. Grief surfaced without warning. Faces of men I buried, mothers who begged for mercy I could not promise, children trained to obey before they could ask why. Hypocrisy whispered that I had spoken certainty while hiding hunger. I told myself to focus, to purify intention, to circle until peace returned. It did not. With each step, unanswered prayers stacked like stones in my throat. I remembered nights of ablution that washed skin but not fear, sermons polished to avoid wounds, contradictions memorized and shelved. The air smelled of sweat and incense, and the sound of millions merged into a roar that dulled my hearing. I felt small, then false, then afraid. I bowed my head and tried to pray, but my mouth refused the familiar address. Instead, a thought broke through, uninvited and desperate. God, whoever you are, if you are real, see me now. The ground seemed to tilt. The chant faded to a distant echo, as if the world had inhaled and paused. My heartbeat grew loud, each thud a question. I closed my eyes, then opened them, expecting the same stone, the same crowd. The space before me looked unchanged, yet everything felt different, like a room after rain. Light gathered without source, not bright but clean, easing the pressure in my chest. My knees weakened. I thought of the warnings I had taught, the boundaries I had enforced, the danger of imagination. Fear rose, sharp and instructive, telling me to look away, to recite, to flee. But another pull steadied me, gentle and firm, inviting attention. I breathed, and the breath felt borrowed. Around me, bodies moved and voices cried, yet a stillness wrapped the place where I stood. I sensed presence before sight, nearness before form, as if truth had weight. My thoughts scrambled for explanation, labeling the moment fatigue, heat, emotion. None fit. I had come seeking obedience and found exposure. Tears blurred my vision, surprising me with their warmth. I had not wept here before. I wiped my face and lifted my gaze. The air shimmered. Where there should have been only stone and passing shoulders, there was space, open and attentive. My mind insisted this was impossible. My heart leaned forward. I remembered the hunger, the locked door, the longing I could not name. It felt answered, not solved. The presence did not accuse, it waited. I felt memories surge like heat mirages, my father's stern lessons, my first sermon applause, the nights I silenced questions, the days I defended certainty with volume. Shame mixed with relief, because being seen felt lighter than hiding. I realized belief had trained me to fear honesty, and honesty now asked me to stay. I counted breaths to avoid collapsing. The marble beneath my feet felt solid, ancient, witness to countless vows. I wondered how many had stood here torn between ritual and truth, how many had turned away, choosing safety over light, habit over hope, certainty over life. The thought unsettled me because I sensed this place had become a mirror, reflecting not devotion but desire, not rule but relationship. The crowd continued its orbit, unaware of the fracture forming inside me. unaware that certainty was loosening its grip, unaware that fear was giving way to attention. A prayer formed without language, a surrender without doctrine. I felt known, not measured. Fear tightened again, and this time braided with awe. I realized the question was no longer whether God existed, but whether I would allow myself to see. I swallowed, steadying my breath, aware that crossing this moment would undo me. The thought struck with clarity and dread. If this was true, my life would fracture. If I turned away, the hunger would devour me. My heart hammered, time slowed, and air listened. I stood suspended between safety and truth, listening to the quiet that had found me. Then, in that quiet, someone stood where no man should be. I did not expect a face. I expected fear, judgment, or fire. Instead, I felt seen. The presence before me gathered into form, gentle and unyielding, like authority wrapped in mercy. I knew who he was before my mind could argue. Jesus, not Isa the prophet, not a distant name softened by explanation. This was Jesus, a living, near, impossible to mistake. My knees buckled and I sank to the marble. Years of discipline, fear, pride, and exhaustion spilled out of me without permission. I waited for condemnation, for a voice listing my failures. None came. Peace settled, heavy and warm, pressing into my chest like hands that knew wounds. I felt loved, not excused, known, not exposed. Scriptures I had never read ignited inside me, words foreign yet familiar. Come to me, all who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. The sentence landed with weight, not sound. I sobbed, loud and uncontrolled, ashamed of my tears yet unable to stop. Around me, pilgrims passed, unaware, their prayers flowing past my collapse. He did not touch me, yet I felt held. He did not accuse, yet I felt convicted, pierced by truth that healed. Fear rose next, and sharp and practical. I saw my children's faces, my wife's silence, my father's disappointment. I saw courtrooms, interrogations, graves. I understood the cost before the comfort, believing this would end my life, denying it would end my soul. His gaze did not hurry me. Time stretched, thin as breath. I wanted to look away, to retreat into habit. I thought of the warnings, the sermons where I mocked Christians, the ease of dismissal. Shame burned, then softened. I realized my certainty had been fear in uniform. Obedience had replaced love. Silence had replaced truth. In that stillness, I sensed invitation, not command. Follow me. The words were not spoken, yet they settled. I nodded, barely, afraid of my own courage. The light did not blind, it clarified. I felt smaller, then freer. The presence receded, not gone, but within. Noise rushed back, bodies jostled, chants swelled. I stood, trembling, unsure if I had dreamed, but the peace remained, steady as breath. I left the courtyard changed, carrying a secret that burned. I did not tell anyone. I prayed it was illusion. I prayed it was truth. Both prayers terrified me. That night, sleep fled, and his eyes followed me. Each time I closed my own, peace pressed closer. I knew nothing could be the same. If this was real, my world would collapse. Titles would turn to weapons. Love would become threat. Faith would demand blood. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, listening to my heart. It beat with a new rhythm, steady and unafraid. I did not know where to run. I only knew I had been found. Dawn crept in, pale and ordinary. My life looked unchanged. Inside, everything burned. I realized belief was no longer theory. It was encounter. Truth had a face, and it knew my name. Fear whispered survival. Peace whispered surrender. I held both, shaking, aware that choosing either would cost. The question was no longer who God was. The question was who I would be. I rose with the sun, carrying light I could not explain. I feared discovery, yet I feared denial more. My steps felt guided, my breath borrowed. I knew the search had ended. A greater danger began. If this was real, my life was already over. I carried that terror quietly, hiding it beneath routine and robes. Every greeting felt watched, every sermon risky. The peace did not leave. It waited, patient and demanding. I wondered how long I could pretend. I wondered who I would become when truth spoke aloud. The memory of his eyes steadied me. They held sorrow, not surprise. As if he had always been there, as if I had been late. I sensed a path forming, narrow and costly. Turning back would be easier. Moving forward would be truer. I did not choose that night. I only received what could not be returned. Faith was no longer inherited. It had found me. Fear promised protection. Jesus promised life. I lay between them, breathing, knowing dawn would demand a response. The weight of choice pressed, yet hope flickered. I closed my eyes, whispering nothing, trusting presence. Morning waited, consequences waited, and somewhere, beyond fear, peace waited too. I breathed, counted, and faced the coming day alone. Yet not alone at all. Not anymore. Now. After that night, secrecy became my oxygen. I woke before dawn, performed ablution with shaking hands, and preached as if nothing had happened. Inside, the memory pulsed. At night, when the house slept, I locked the door, dimmed the light, and opened my phone like a thief. My fingers hesitated before the search bar, then typed words I had warned others never to touch. Bible, Gospel, Jesus Christ. Fear spiked with every click. I deleted history, erased apps, hid my breath. When I read, something in me softened. Jesus spoke plainly. He touched the unclean. He forgave enemies. He wept. This was not the weak figure I had mocked. This was authority clothed in mercy. I compared verses quietly, Quran beside Gospel, heart racing. Where one demanded fear, the other offered rest. Where one enforced silence, the other invited honesty. I watched testimonies late into the night, men and women whispering hope from hidden rooms. They had lost families, countries, names, yet their eyes were alive. That frightened me more than threats. I attended an online church once, volume barely audible, heart pounding at every footstep. When they prayed in Jesus' name, peace flooded my chest, immediate and undeserved. I wept into my sleeve, ashamed of tears that felt like home. Scripture lodged in me like seed. You will know the truth, and the truth will set you free. Freedom sounded dangerous. Freedom sounded like death. Days blurred. My sermons grew shorter. My answers less sharp. Colleagues noticed. My wife studied my face. I avoided her questions, afraid love would expose me. One night, alone, I knelt and whispered his name. Jesus. My voice broke. I expected fear. Instead, warmth settled, steady and kind. I felt seen again. I confessed without language, surrender without promise. I knew then he was not only real, he was Lord. And the realization terrified me. Lord meant allegiance. Lord meant loss. I argued with myself, listing consequences, rehearsing denial. The peace did not argue back. It waited. I read more, hiding deeper, learning quietly. Grace offended my training. Love disrupted my logic. I tried to stop. I could not. The hunger had found food. Each night ended the same. Phone dimmed, heart awake, fear circling. I knew exposure was coming. I knew safety was thinning. Still, I returned. Truth had weight. Silence became impossible. When I closed my eyes, his presence remained. Not accusing, not demanding, simply near. I realized survival had shaped my faith more than God. That thought unraveled years. I was not becoming Western. I was becoming honest. My prayers changed. I stopped performing. I spoke simply, sometimes wordless. Peace answered. I feared discovery, yet feared denial more. The door I had avoided stood open. I stood trembling on the threshold, aware that stepping through would burn bridges forever, yet staying would suffocate me. I whispered again, "Jesus, help me." Something answered back. Change never stays hidden for long. It leaks through tone, through silence, through what you stop correcting. My wife noticed first. She asked if I was tired. I said yes. She asked if I was sick. I said no. She watched me pray with eyes that searched my face more than the floor. My children sensed distance they could not name. At the mosque, colleagues tested me with questions sharpened to cut. I answered carefully, slower, less absolute. They exchanged glances. Doubt has a smell. Family dinners grew tense. My father's voice hardened when he spoke of obedience and honor. He reminded me of lineage, of responsibility, of the eyes upon us. I nodded and felt the weight press harder. Nights filled with arguments rehearsed in my head, explanations I would never give. Fear crawled into ordinary moments. A knock at the door startled me. A phone call tightened my chest. I lived split, half in routine, half in truth. The hunger quieted, replaced by dread. One evening, my brother confronted me directly. He asked if I believed everything I preached. The room went still. I lied with a practiced smile. The lie tasted bitter. He watched longer than comfort allowed. The next day, elders requested a meeting. Concern, they called it. Guidance. They spoke gently, circling questions about doctrine, loyalty, influence. I felt hunted. At home, my wife asked if we were safe. I could not answer. Love became leverage. Children became threats spoken softly. Think of them, they said. Think of your mother. Think of consequences. I did, every hour. My prayers shifted again, urgent and afraid. Jesus felt near, yet distant from danger. I wanted protection without exposure, faith without cost. It did not come. Rumors moved faster than truth. A colleague stopped greeting me. Another warned me to be careful. I saw how quickly respect curdled into suspicion. Honor culture sharpened its knives. The fear I had taught now taught me. One night, voices gathered outside my door. Questions followed. Accusations whispered. Someone had spoken. Someone had noticed too much. My wife cried quietly, packing bags we might need. I held my children longer than usual, memorizing weight and breath. Inside, a choice formed, heavy and unavoidable. Deny quietly and live. Speak honestly and lose everything. I prayed for escape. None came. Instead, peace held me, steady and firm. I realized love had a spine. The next morning, I was summoned. The word carried finality. As I walked, streets looked sharper, sounds louder. I wondered if this was how it ends, ordinary and abrupt. At the office, faces avoided mine. Doors closed behind me. Questions became charges. They asked if I followed Jesus. Silence stretched. My heart pounded. I thought of his eyes. I answered carefully, truthfully, without defense. The room chilled. Papers appeared. Phones buzzed. I understood then that family had become court, that love had turned conditional. That night, the report was filed. My name left my family and entered a system. I sat alone, listening to my breath, feeling the floor beneath me. Fear screamed. Peace answered softly. I did not know how long I had. I only knew the lie could not save me anymore. The choice had been made by speaking at all. Darkness gathered, procedural and calm. I felt grief for what I would lose, relief for what I would not deny. Outside, life continued. Inside, a door closed. They reported me that same night. They did not raise their voices. That frightened me more than shouting. The room was small, windowless, cooled by a machine that hummed like an insect. 3 men sat across from me, robes neat, faces practiced. They called me brother. They asked about my health, my family, my stress. Then the questions sharpened. Had I spoken of Jesus? Had I seen something at the Kaaba? Had I questioned doctrine? I answered slowly, choosing truth without spectacle. Silence followed each answer, heavy and deliberate. And one man took notes. Another watched my eyes. The third spoke gently about repentance, about mercy, about returning before consequences hardened. The word apostasy entered the room like a blade laid carefully on the table. They explained procedures calmly, as if describing prayer times, detention, review, judgment. They asked if I would recant. I asked for time. They exchanged looks. Time was not offered. I was escorted through corridors that smelled of disinfectant and fear. A door closed. A lock clicked. The cell was bare. A mat, a drain, a light that never dimmed. Panic surged, hot and immediate. My hands shook. My thoughts raced through images of my children waking without me, my wife answering questions with silence, my father's face folding into grief and anger. I pressed my forehead to the wall and breathed. For the first time, I prayed without words, without ritual, without bargaining. Jesus, I am afraid. Peace arrived, quiet and firm, like a hand on my shoulder. It did not erase fear. It steadied me within it. Hours blurred. Questions returned, harsher now. Accusations replaced concern. They asked me to sign statements I could not accept. They spoke of examples, of deterrence, of honor restored through punishment. Death was mentioned without heat. I listened, heart pounding, surprised by a calm that refused to leave. I realized faith had moved from thought to marrow. It was no longer something I discussed. It was something I inhabited. Alone again, I remembered words I had read in secret, words that felt written for cells like this. Perfect love casts out fear. I laughed once, quietly, at the irony. Fear still lived. Love was larger. Days passed, or did not. In time lost its shape. Food arrived. Sleep came in fragments. Each time dread surged, peace answered, uninvited and faithful. I was not brave. I was held. When they returned with papers, my name printed neatly, my offense summarized coldly, I felt grief rise like a tide. This was the cost made visible. I thought of denial, quick and easy, a sentence away. I imagined walking out, returning to routine, burying the memory forever. The thought felt like suffocation. I saw his eyes again, steady and kind. I signed nothing. The men sighed, disappointed, almost sad. They said a decision would be recorded. I was returned to the cell. That night, I slept, not deeply, but enough. Dreams came without terror. Morning brought light that looked the same as night. Eventually, a guard escorted me back. A paper lay on the table. It listed my charge and the prescribed outcome. The language was precise, sanitized, final. My hands steadied as I read. I expected despair. I felt resolved. I did not know how escape would come, or if it would. I only knew that life had found me, and I would not trade it for breath. The paper on the table carried my sentence. They brought me in once more, not with threats this time, but with options shaped like mercy. A familiar face sat across from me, an elder who had taught me as a boy. He spoke softly about mistakes, about stress, about how men sometimes imagine things when pressure grows. He offered a way back, one sentence, one denial, one signature. The room felt warmer, almost kind. I thought of my children's laughter, the way my wife rested her head on my shoulder when she was afraid. I thought of my father's pride and the lineage I carried like a seal. I thought of my own survival. My mouth went dry. The elder leaned forward and said my name as if it was still safe. He said this could end today. I felt the weight of habit tug me toward agreement. Years of training urged compliance. Then I remembered the quiet in the courtyard, the peace in the cell, the presence that did not coerce. I saw his eyes again, steady, sorrowful, unafraid. I realized the choice had already been made the night the truth found me. I could not see, I could not say, I could not betray life to preserve a shell. My voice shook, but it held. I said I would not deny what I knew. The elder closed his eyes, as if grieving. Papers moved, decisions traveled. The kindness evaporated. I was escorted through doors that led not to freedom, but to disappearance. Arrangements were made quickly, quietly. A windowless vehicle, a route not discussed. I understood that my name would be erased carefully, that absence would answer questions better than explanation. I was allowed one call. I spoke to my wife in fragments, telling her I loved her, telling her to be strong, telling her nothing that could endanger her. She cried without words. I memorized the sound. The journey unfolded in silence. Fear rose and fell. Peace remained. I was released in a place I did not know, with instructions I did not receive, carrying nothing that tied me to who I had been. Titles fell away. Identity thinned. I walked until my legs ached, then walked more. Hunger returned, different now, clean. I found shelter through strangers who asked no questions, who spoke kindness without conditions. News reached me later, all in pieces. My position is filled. My name is avoided. My family was pressured into silence. Grief came in waves, heavy and human. I let it. I did not curse those who condemned me. I understood fear too well. Nights were hardest. I replayed faces, wondering if love could survive distance. I prayed without language, trusting presence. Slowly, dawns arrived without dread. I learned to breathe again. I learned that obedience had not saved me, but surrender had steadied me. I learned that truth does not promise safety, only life. When I could finally speak aloud without fear, I said his name again. Jesus. It anchored me. I had no revenge to pursue, no victory to claim. Falsehood exposed itself by requiring silence. Fear collapses when faced with love. I carried scars I did not display. I carried hope I could not hide. And I walked away with nothing that could be confiscated. No robe, no title, no protection. I walked away with life. I walked away with him. I am free now, not wealthy, not respected, not protected by titles or tradition, but I am alive in a way I never knew I could be. Each morning, I wake without fear pressing against my chest. Each prayer is no longer performance, it is breath, confession, conversation, surrender. I have found a family in Christ, strangers who love without condition, who pray without judgment, who teach without expectation. I walk streets that once would have terrified me, and I carry a calm that surprises even me. The weight of lineage, expectation, and obligation has lifted, replaced by a presence that never abandons. I can weep, I can laugh, I can rest. Forgiveness flows through me for those who condemned. I'm for those who reported, for those who expected silence. I understand fear, but I do not let it rule me. My children know me only through distance, but I carry them in prayer, trusting God to hold what I cannot touch. To those listening, questioning, searching in secret, know this. Your fear is not stronger than His love. Your doubt is not stronger than His truth. Courage is not absence of fear, but moving forward in spite of it. To Christians, watch and remember the cost some bear silently, and pray for mercy and courage for those still hidden in the shadows. I cannot guarantee safety. I cannot guarantee comfort, but I can testify to life, full, rich, unborrowed, and eternal in Him. Jesus is worth everything, worth the loss, worth the exile, worth the fear, worth the nights trembling alone, worth leaving everything behind for nothing visible, for everything invisible. I walk forward with nothing that the world values, but everything that matters. He carries my past, holds my present, and shapes my future. I am free, fully, finally, because He found me when I was lost, because He called my name, because I answered. My story is not over, but the chains are gone. The Kaaba, the halls of judgment, the whispers of fear, none of it holds me now. Only His presence, steady, faithful, eternal, and I am home.